You also run faster than most people. So no matter what's happening, you can probably just outrun them.
If I'm in a new place and it's like middle of the day, big park, bunch of other runners, I just want to know my surroundings.
I don't run as fast as you, but I run faster than most.
Can you imagine being a woman and going out for a jog?
Some guy was running down the street just going crazy. Obviously on drugs, bro. Please don't get very close to me.
How much calculation are you doing of the potential for weapon?
The guy has a knife or a gun?
You can be confident, muscular, athletic looking, but then it does get to the point where do you have the skills to back that up?
All right, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Gabe Yanez and I, we are on for our weekly episode. We are in person. We're in my home office, and we got all things to talk about today. We started recording a little bit, and then I paused it. I was like, you know what, dude? We're gonna start back from the get-go. So here we are. Gabe came in from Texas. He had the family with him, and welcome.
Yeah, man. Beauty of being in person. I put out just something on Instagram because I'm always curious, and I think that this is a good reminder. If there's specific things that you guys want us to talk about on the podcast, we love hearing from people, whether it's on social media and emails, not just letting us know hey, love the podcast, love that episode. Obviously, we love hearing that, but if you have any feedback, actually, this is interesting. I got a DM today about a gentleman who was just hey, super honest feedback. And I appreciate it, honestly. He's playing a game with, and I don't know if he was just saying this to soften the feedback he was giving, but he essentially said that he has a game going with his kids where they have to put a couple dollars or something. I think he said euros because he's in Europe.
For swearing or something?
No, for saying out of... not in context, but just yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In a place to as filler. And he was saying that, both of it do it, not a lot, but we do it. And I've listened back and it's true. And Ariel's even brought it up to me. And it's something that I try and think about. But anyway, that was just a way of saying that we appreciate all feedback, positive, constructive, but most importantly, if there are topics or stuff that you want to hear us cover, we'd love to hear from you and, talk about those topics.
Yeah. I mean, that's good perspective that someone's picking up on the word or whatnot. That's, yeah.
One of the most
filler words.
One of the most impressive skills, and we've had some guests on the podcast that do this incredibly, incredibly well, is being articulate by being comfortable with there being pauses and not feeling like you need to
or fill.
Yeah. Because once you start doing that and doing that a lot, it takes away from what you're trying to say. And sometimes even just taking a pause is so much better than feeling like you need to fill that in. And I think that that's the thing that I'm trying to be better at. But anyway, 2025, we're really trying to take the podcast to the next level, including not having as much filler words.
Yeah, not as much filler words. Yeah. Hey, I didn't even know it was a thing until he just brought, I wasn't thinking through that lens, right? Because we're trying to think about good conversations, this and that. But you're right. Filler words. My brother-in-law gave a really, really good speech the other day about his dad for his birthday. But he used this word, he used like each time.
It takes away.
Yeah, a little bit. But he did a great job. But we were talking briefly about Daniel
Penny.
And we were talking about this. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the case just recently, we should say, he got acquitted. And we had a quote unquote hot take, but I was telling you I need more information. But anyways.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the conversation that I think is worth having, because someone messaged us on Instagram. It's hey, what's your opinion on this thing? And I can definitely share maybe what I think I would have done in that context or whatever. But I think that the important thing is that we kind of live in a time now, and I guess this applies to us now a little bit because we do have a podcast, we do have an audience where people appreciate your opinion on something. They want to hear hey, Jay, what do you think about this? And I think the thing that you brought up, which is a great point, and I think that that's the conversation worth having, is that it's difficult to have, hey, here's my opinion. I think it was right that he was acquitted. I think that it was wrong that he was acquitted. When you don't have all the facts. And I think that that's one of the things that is unfortunate in today's day, that a lot of people will go out and quickly film an Instagram video hot take on this thing that is super controversial before you know all the facts, before you know what happened, before you went and like did your homework to actually be informed on these things. Because one of the things you were saying is like, how long did he keep him in chokehold? Like, what were the circumstances that got him there? Like, did he have to hold him in that position? Like, I'm sure that you can go and do the research on all those things, but at the end of the day, like, we don't know. And so it's hard to say, like, what I'm not going to sit here and say is like, oh, 100% he should have been acquitted. Oh, 100% this is crazy and it's whatever. Because another reason that this case has been incredibly polarizing is the fact that, you know,
it was different races.
Different races, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things, so Gabe was bringing it up, and I said to him, I was like, hey man, we should maybe, let me go do more research on this. I think one of the things that I'm going to focus on in 2025 for the podcast is that when we have a subject, really feeling like if we want to talk about a subject aside from fitness or like our own opinions on like my wife and my family, is like, hey, if we're going to have a specific subject, let's do enough research where I feel comfortable saying, dude, I did a full amount of research and I believe Daniel should have been acquitted. Or, I don't know, man, I kind of have a conflict there. But I think from a hot take perspective, what you and I were talking about was like, would you have done that? And I think that, you know, as the story goes, and again, this is from just the headlines I read. And I do think I'd like to do some more research on this because I'm actually pretty intrigued, and then come back and talk about it again on the podcast. But that, you know, there was a gentleman causing a lot of disruption and scaring a lot of people. And this other gentleman, Daniel, tried to control the situation the best he thought at the time. And you know, I guess the victim, or I don't even know if that's the right term, I guess, ended up passing away, which is terrible. But now he got acquitted. And so it tells me that, you know, hopefully there was due process and everything went down and the jury really got all the information. But I think it's a really slippery slope. And this is a really interesting case. And that's why I want to do more research on it, because what precedent does this set for the future? So you have someone that's causing some type of chaos. Like, even take for me, I have a concealed carry. I regularly do combatives. I'd like to think that, like, if I was in an altercation, like, I would be one of the guys who would need to step in. But now all of a sudden, am I putting my life and my family at risk of going to prison forever because you're just trying to be a good Samaritan? Like, it's a really interesting topic. Like,
yeah, man. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I'm not even going to pretend to know 100% what I would do in that case, especially as someone that, like, you know, at the end of the day, doesn't have the type of experience that you do, for example, of like, you know, what I would do to take someone and control them in a way where I know that I'm not harming them. Because I know that that's something that you probably understand better than most. Like, there are ways for you to pin someone down and know that, hey, they're not going anywhere, but you're also not doing anything that's causing like irreparable harm.
Right.
And I think that that's obviously the value of training the way that you train. But because I don't have that skill set, and because I'm like very self-aware of the fact that I don't have that skill set, my number one priority when I'm trying to protect my family is having good situational awareness and trying to get out of Dodge as soon as things even like look like they can possibly be going south, and get my family out of harm's way. Like, number one.
Well, it's different with the family. So he didn't have a family with him.
That's true.
Which I think that if you had a family with you, like, my mindset would probably,
different equation.
Dude, I was talking to a guy yesterday at an event, and we were talking about concealed carry, which then we went off on like a tangent about active shooters and all kinds of crazy shit. And one of the things that he brought up, because I was telling him, I was like, you know, if I have my family with me, I feel a different sense than if I'm solo. Because if I'm solo, I'm just looking out for myself. If I'm with my family now, they're my priority. And how am I going to react in a situation is probably going to be a little bit different. But based on this subway experience, if my family was with me versus not, I don't know, man. These are situations you got to think through, though, because they have repercussions and big consequences, right?
For sure.
So imagine if some dude's on a subway and getting crazy, let's just say, just getting crazy and causing a ton of disruption, but isn't necessarily like at a point where they're going to like hurt you. Probably just let it ride. But now all of a sudden, if that turns from like not going to be a big deal to a big deal, you got to act and you got to be able to protect your family. I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, like, well, anyways, I want to do some more research on this particular case because it is very intriguing to me about what the precedent now was set from the courts. Because to hear that someone, you know, actually died because of being placed in a chokehold, what was the entire situation? How long did he hold it? Did he have to restrain him that way? Was there other ways? What did the jury find out? I'm intrigued, so I'll bring it back up on the show.
And for you, I'm curious, what, man, man, now I'm like self-conscious about the thing. What are you thinking? What are,
Don't say like or
how much calculation are you doing of the potential for weapons too?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Because
dude,
you could be the most skilled
yeah,
grappler on the planet.
if the guy has a knife or a gun, dude, I think those are all. That's why I don't think that you need that's why I don't think you need to get involved until you have to get involved. You know what I'm saying? Like at some point you have to get involved because it got to such a red zone that like there was no other option.
Right.
But if it's not to that point, then why don't you just let it be? Right. Like, dude, I was in San Francisco. I think I told you this is a while ago. Some guy was running down the street, just going crazy. He was obviously on drugs, just going crazy, screaming, kicking over trash cans, going crazy. And my kids were right next to me. So I stand in front of him and I'm just watching this guy running at me. I'm just like, bro, please don't get like very close to me. Like, just please, like, just stay like enough far away. And sure enough, he didn't get close enough to become like a real, threat. But it's like, that's the situation where I'm thinking about is like at some point, even if he did have a weapon or whatever, like you got to kind of act like based on what Tony Blauer was talking about.
But at what point in that specific situation are you just like turning around and making a run for it?
That's
like,
good.
At what point are you just like taking a chance of like, is this guy going to get, because you saw him coming. You could have like ran and run faster.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, we were waiting in line at a restaurant. Yeah. These are all things you got to think about. And it's like, it's crazy to think about, but you have to think about it.
It's unfortunate that you have to think about them, but you have to think about them.
Yeah, you have to think about it. But yeah. And
you know, it's funny that I'm just thinking about this now, but this morning I went for a run. So yeah. I left from...
You also run faster than most people. So no matter what's happening, you can probably just outrun them.
That's right. But I ran from Santana Row down Winchester to Campbell and got on the Los Gatos Creek Trail.
Yeah.
And there's parts of that run, it's not like, I wouldn't even call it sketchy, but there's parts of that run where like, I wouldn't run in headphones, for example. Like, I think that is just, for me, too much of a, just because I'm in a new place too.
Yeah.
Like I'm in a new place.
You didn't run with headphones this morning?
No. And I specifically, well, actually I didn't have the headphones that would have worked because I got a new phone. But anyway, I wouldn't have, if I'm in a new place and it's like a place where like, it's not just, middle of the day, big park, like, a bunch of other runners. Like it's definitely a place like when you're running down that area of San Jose where like, I just want to know my surroundings. Like I want to hear if someone's potentially like riding a bike. But if you're running right behind
so I've thought about that too. Okay, riding a bike. All right, I hadn't thought about it like that. I hadn't thought of it. I'm figuring when I run, I wear headphones. And I don't run as fast as you, but I run faster than most. So I figure for someone to catch up to me, I would have to see them at some way. But you're right. Maybe some dude's got a bike.
A bunch of people are on a bike. A bunch of people are on a bike when I'm running.
Dude, now, yeah.
But
how about an e-bike too?
But here's the thing. The thought that came into my mind though is that's like the self-awareness that I have. Can you imagine like being a woman and going out for a jog? Like it's just completely different. Like dude, the way that they go about having to like navigate the world is just so incredibly different. And something you think about now having a daughter.
Oh yeah.
And also like when we go on these trips, I'm training for this marathon, but Ariel's training for a half marathon and we'll split days. So like we were just in Pismo for the weekend and I did my long run on Saturday. She stayed with the kids. She did her long run on Sunday. She stayed with the kids. So I also think about it now in this context of like, I'm almost like running the day before wherever we're at so that like I feel good about like where then my wife is going to go do a run because it is different. Like it's silly to not acknowledge the fact that like the risk potential and the things that are going through my head as I'm going out there for a run is very different than what it would be for my wife,
for sure,
potentially for my daughter someday. And I think that even just being aware of that, I think is beneficial and having a conversation about that kind of stuff. But just something I was thinking about this.
No, and so what's the solution? You're just not going to run? Of course you should be running because, dude, running is such a fundamental skill, especially to be able to protect yourself. But yeah, that kind of stuff is scary. My sister's sister-in-law, their house just got broken into, and
no way, SoCal?
Oh yeah, and she got flustered. My sister, so like my
that is terrifying.
Yeah, and they have this guy on camera, and dude, yeah, it's just she ended up, so she heard someone breaking in. She was downstairs. She ran upstairs, and instead of going into the master bedroom, she went in her kid's closet because she knew this guy was going to go probably to the master. And So yeah, he went to the master, took a bunch of jewelry, and then got out by the time she called the cops. I guess someone arrived at her house 33 seconds after she called, and the guy was already gone. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, I mean, she was very obviously very frightened, and we started talking about a bunch of stuff, and it's just like at some point, it's like, some of the if you talk to a lot of people that are in this space, the like the pepper sprays of the world, like, I mean, they could give you an impression like you could do something, but man, that was a scary situation for all of them down south. So I'm sorry that happened to them for sure.
That's scary stuff, man.
And that's an exact situation where we were talking about it. You remember how Tony Blauer was talking about how like you would know something's coming, dude. In that case, like you don't know. It's happening, and you got to choose safety. So she ran upstairs, boom, went in the closet.
That's terrifying,
dude. Very terrifying. Speaking of which, Gabe came into my home office, and I have this new. I want to bring this up on the podcast because if you're interested in getting like a home defense shotgun, what is it? It's Racked.
Yeah.
R-A-C-T. Mm-hmm. R-A-C-T. I had been researching them online a lot. And so if you're interested, check them out, because basically what they do is you hang it up on the wall and you hit a button, and it's a fingerprint button, and then the weapon falls out and you could grab it. It's pretty badass. So far, I've only had it one time where it wouldn't pick up my fingerprint. So I've been testing it on a regular basis almost every day. And one time it didn't. I don't know if it was because I was like sweaty or what, but it didn't pick up my fingerprint, which would be really terrifying if you had to use it.
You were showing me the home defense shotgun that you have. The system's really cool. But what you were saying about just the sound of cocking the weapon.
Oh yeah.
Like if it was a situation of, someone coming in, like you just hear that.
Bro.
And you would hope that that's deterrent enough. It should be deterrent.
Because it's loud.
It's loud, and it's like an undeniable sound.
Yeah, undeniable.
You've seen it in movies. You've heard the sound. Like you hear that and you're like, all right.
Yeah, you know something's going on. But anyways, now that we're here, we're going to be training later today. What are we doing?
We're going to do a flex session just because honestly, that's what's on the docket for me today training wise, and I enjoy it. But you can probably talk me into something else if you really want to. But
okay.
Mondays are Universal Chest Day. So
Universal Chest Day. All right, perfect.
That's right, man. That's right. We're on, so this is going to come out 2 weeks later. I'm always a week ahead, but we're wrapping up week 6 of this most recent flex cycle. I've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, but I love this progression. We've done it twice this year. We're going to do it twice again next year of the 5x5, 6x4, 8x3. You do 2 weeks of each, and we rotate through the movements, but it's just a really nice way to hit the 20 to 25 like total reps in a session, which is like universally understood as the sweet spot for improving strength. But the fact that you do 2 weeks of 5x5, then 6x4, 8x3 is psychologically, that you're going from doing 5s to 4s. So it's a little bit easy to like take an aggressive jump that week. And then you're going from 4s to 3s. And yes, you're doing a lot more sets, but it's just nice to know that, hey, all I need to do is get 3. Then I rest. All I need to do is get 3. So the progressive overload, at least from a psychological perspective, is a little easier. And I've had huge benefits twice. And this second time has been interesting, man, because I'm telling you, the most fun part about picking up running again, I was told for so long, if you want to be good at running, you can't lift weights.
Yep.
Can't put on muscle. You just can't do it. It's going to be counter to wanting to be good at endurance sports. And if you want to put on muscle, you're killing your gains if you go out for a jog. You're killing your gains if you're going out and doing anything endurance-wise. I was told that for so long. And I really appreciate guys like Nick Bear, who have been on the podcast, friend of the podcast, who have like shown that that's so incredibly just not true. And it's made training so fun for me because I really enjoy, and honestly, I've always been good at endurance stuff, but I also have really enjoyed training and hypertrophy training and seeing how I can improve my body composition. The fact that there's a way that you can marry the two. And honestly, I really, really do think that one benefits the other in that, I think you become a lot more injury resistant when you're doing the strength training, where a lot of endurance athletes, they're always banged up. And I have, knock on wood, been able to avoid a lot of the injuries that have nagged me every other time I try and get into running. And then on the flip side, and this I can't speak so definitively, but I've heard that there are a lot of benefits to improving your recovery in between hypertrophy sessions by doing the zone 2 stuff. Like that stuff is supposed to improve your recovery so that you can actually hit that stuff better. And again, where people generally mess up in mixing both of those two disciplines is they try and do too much. What you find like a hypertrophy program and you find like a marathon program and you just do both on top of each other. That's going to be too
it's
much.
a lot of volume.
It's a lot of volume, or you're just not eating enough. You're not fueling enough and recognizing how much work you're doing. I think that that's where people get those, either the gains disappear or you feel bad or you get injured, but there is a way to do both. And that's been a really fun part of getting back into running because I have the marathon now in 5 weeks.
Yeah. When is this release?
So this release is December 30th.
This is today.
Sorry, December 23rd.
December 23rd. So right before Christmas. Hope everybody has a great Christmas, by the way. And your race is the 6th, right?
No, January 19th.
Oh, January 19th. Okay.
So it's still a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But I've dropped no weight. I've been like 172 to 175 the whole time. And that was kind of the goal. Like I knew I wasn't going to build or, put on a bunch of muscle while I was running this much.
But maintaining.
For sure.
Yeah. Because how many miles are you doing a week? 50?
40 to 50. Yeah.
50 miles a week, maintaining body weight by doing, basically hypertrophy bodybuilding and running.
Yeah. And obviously making sure that I'm hitting my protein number every day and eating plenty of food, staying fueled. I think that one thing that I tried to do in the past too is like fasted cardio, which again, like if that works for you, if you're like the type of person that loves going out there, empty stomach, getting a little bit of cardio in, and that's just a good way to start your day, like keep doing it. But the one thing that I've tried now, because the thinking is that, hey, if you're running and doing this endurance stuff for performance, doing it on an empty gas tank just doesn't make sense. And if you think about it, you're like, duh, it doesn't make sense. So the fact that now like I'm really, really fueling up for every single run that I go out there, I think has been a huge help. Not just to make sure that I'm like performing well and progressing on the running side, but also just to make sure that I'm like getting enough calories throughout the day.
And your performance no, that's something I've had to come to the conclusion of too, like especially at jiu-jitsu. It's like, what am I trying to do? Well, I'm trying to perform well, right? I want to try and, be cognitively there. I want to try and move well. And so the way for me, I've had to start incorporating more food before jiu-jitsu too. And before like the long running sessions. Take for example our high rocks. Like I felt pretty good. I think taking that goo or whatever in the middle of it definitely helped. But I'm on the same page as you. One thing that's jiu-jitsu's helped me with a lot is my mobility. I didn't realize this at the time. Yeah, but like my mobility is because I'm on the ground being dynamic, doing a lot of stuff, and before pre and post, I do more stretching pre and post jiu-jitsu than anything else I do. And so I think that's been a major key for me to stay like relatively mobile, like not crazy, but more mobile than most, I think.
What are because I can tell you for running easily.
Yeah, IT-band.
What the most common injury, like what are people getting banged up in the jiu-jitsu space? I was just listening to Rogan had Derek for More Plates, More Dates. I love those episodes, man. Yeah. And they were talking about the neck. Like people really mess up their neck.
Yeah, I can see that.
But in your experience, what are like the common
I hear a lot of ribs. So especially for like newer people, they won't tap that early. And so someone will put their knee on their rib and just kind of like crack it or in some cases even break it, but just like kind of cause some like injury there. I've heard ribs a lot. I would say from like a athletic perspective, probably the joints. So, and a lot of times I think it happens from not tapping early enough. So I think that if people just tapped earlier, they wouldn't ever have the joint expressed at a position that like tweaks it. That's what you hear the most of.
And is it like mostly elbows, knees, it's mostly ankles, elbows?
It's mostly elbows. Because by the time you learn how to attack the ankle and the foot, the person who's putting it on knows enough. And the person who's getting like, for example, a guy had like a really nice straight foot lock on me the other day, but I knew how to react to it. He didn't turn it on like crazy, but I was able to react to it. in an arm bar, like, dude, if someone gets you in a good arm bar, there's ways you can get out, but sometimes they're just not worth it. Like, dude, if you're in a really good arm bar, like just tap, like just move on, because that tweak in your elbow or that tweak in your, knee. Oh, dude, a knee bar? Fuck no, bro. If someone gets me in a knee bar, I'm instantly tapping because it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
That's what you see the most at jiu-jitsu, I think. I think a lot of times when people come back from injuries in jiu-jitsu, more times than not, they just didn't tap early enough. It's oftentimes not their training partner. It's oftentimes them. The only exception I could think of is when a very large man rolls with either a smaller guy or a woman, and he doesn't understand how heavy he is, and he puts too much weight on their ribs or different areas, and then that could cause some issues.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah.
Dude, when I get into it, because I'm sure I will, I already know. Well, we talked about doing the private approach. I honestly have to find someone, but I think that would be the easiest way to start. But there's a really cool school by me that does like kid stuff, the young kids middle of the day, back to back with like adult stuff. And I think that because I definitely want to get Shay involved ASAP, then it'll just make sense. But man, dude.
I saw Dave Lipson. Did you see a video of him today?
No.
So Dave Lipson is obviously, Dave Lipson, he has this company called Thunder Bro, and he's just like such a bro, and he's been in the CrossFit space forever. And he had a video of him drawing from an internal holster and shooting. So like a concealed carry position. And I just messaged him on the public comments. I'm just like, bro, when are we getting you on the mats? Because basically the post that he put up was about just being more capable. And it's just interesting how this guy who's like so into like bodybuilding and stuff like that is now interested in, in learning new skills and acquiring it. Here, I'm going to read the post right now.
Dude, he had a really interesting video while you pull that up with Hiller on like all the shit that he's on.
Yeah. Oh, like TRT and like
all kinds of stuff, And it's, I appreciate the openness.
Yeah. He's just saying like it is.
Because, and this goes back to the podcast I was listening to, and I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off going on a tangent, with Rogan and Derek from More Plates, More Dates, because that's something that they talk a lot about. But it's been almost like to a detriment, the fact that, and it was actually Biden, I learned this on the podcast. So Joe Biden, when he was a senator, was like one of the key guys that put performance enhancing drugs, steroids, as scheduled substances. And that in many ways dampened how much progress there's been in that world because they became illegal. So at the time, they were constantly making those drugs safer and more effective. But then because the stigma and because they became, illegal, it now is impossible to perform studies on. So you have a lot of these bodybuilders that are on steroids are on stuff that like is still the stuff that you would have found in the 80s that is more dangerous because you haven't been able to make it safer. But anyway, it's kind of one of those things where like, if people are going to do it, I think that they should have access to the best information to do it. So I appreciate the stuff that he puts out, not because at least right now.
You mean Lipson?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that content because it's like, it's firsthand experience and like, here's what you should do. Here's what you shouldn't do. Because I think the most dangerous thing is someone, especially someone young, going out there and being like, man, like I'm going to start taking these things, not knowing what they're doing and really messing themselves up. Because
dude, you can say the same thing about psychedelics. Like they were like super popular and they got like, right. And now like mushroom and mental focus, like there's so much opportunity there to like really help some people. But it needs to get past. I do think it got changed from a schedule, like whatever, to a like mushrooms in particular. I think got improved on the schedule, like of like how bad they are, or whatever.
Yeah, something changed, and there's definitely been like more research and more openness to studying it.
100%. So Dave Lipson says it's a video of him drawing his gun and shooting, and he's getting like in like a really deep squat position for shooting. Which whatever, I'm not here to critique his shooting, but he says,
"But you are."
I just did, yeah. But he goes, starting to develop some new life skills the right way in a controlled environment with some great instruction. For a long time, I ignored this stuff, but now I realize nothing is more important. Being a capable man means you can protect your family, your community, and yourself. And like anything, it takes practice.
He's on the Train Hard Club. I love it,
dude. And so that I wrote to him, yeah, time to get you on the mats, bro. And he said, "You're totally right. I've been avoiding it because of my back the past few years, but I plan on starting soon." And so it's just a really good example, right? Like, here's this guy. I wasn't meant to talk about this today, but this is a really great subject. Dave Lipson is like a freak in terms of like how big he is. Like, he's a big man. He's 6'3", played collegiate baseball, like big man. He's jacked. But yet he's saying, I'm starting to develop these life skills because there's nothing more important to be able to protect my family, my community, and myself.
Well, I think that the important part there, because we talk about the looking the part to be a deterrent, and I genuinely believe that that's true, but it's true to an extent.
Right.
There's a point where, like, you know, you can be confident, muscular, athletic looking, and a lot of people that are trying to find an easy target are going to see that and try and find someone else. That's true. But then there becomes a point where, like, you becoming more jacked, bigger, stronger, like, you're not continuing to become a more capable protector. You already have the deterrent part, like, figured out. You just need to look not super out of shape, not confident, like an easy target. But then it does get to the point where, like, okay, like, now do you have the skills to back that up?
Yeah. And do you desire to learn them? And obviously, like in his particular case, dude, I mean, that's music to my ears, right?
For sure.
Like, and you don't need to make it a big deal. You could just get started, you know, once a week, once every couple of weeks, but you use our programs, and then you add in like some firearms and some combatives or none of it. Maybe you go back and you listen to Tony Blauer's stuff, and you go take one of his online courses, you know, whatever. Or you go do a sheepdog course. Those are great too.
Right. Because you get you get enough knowledge to where you're like, oh, okay. Like, it even is a good gateway to understanding how important what you don't know is.
Dude, for
because
sure.
if you don't do something like that, it's very easy you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you might just be like, nah, not for me, not for me. Then you go and you do one of these, and you like roll with someone that is not as strong as you, clearly, doesn't look as fit as you, smaller than you, and they like completely do with you what they will. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, that's got it. Dude, by the way, did you see that stuff? Now that I brought up sheepdog, I didn't mean to bring this up either. Did you see the beef that Tim Kennedy's under?
I did. Have you,
bro?
Dude,
so
what's going on there?
So I don't know if you guys are paying attention to this, but like the way that the special forces community kind of like attacks each other is really like, I'm not in that world, so I'm not claiming to know all the ins and outs, but it is like really kind of shitty the way they attack each other, like right, wrong, or indifferent. Whether the information's, you'd think they'd be able to do some of this stuff behind closed doors or something, like have these conversations. Just, I don't know, man. It's basically, Tim wrote a book a while ago called Scars and Stripes, and I read the book. I thought it's exceptional. And he does in the beginning of the book say, hey, like, this is my closest recollection of these situations, and has been collaborated with as many people as I could. But he's like, still, it's my vantage point, and there might be difference of opinions here. And I guess some of the stuff in that book, I guess these guys on a podcast just came and like, boom, just like one by one, just like attacked it. And Tim even had to make like a whole video explaining what happened. It's just, I guess like the reason why I'm bringing this up is like, it's just unfortunate how like I'm seeing more and more of that, where a lot of the guys who did whatever they did overseas, it just seems like, I don't know how much of it is just to like, because it's getting a lot of clicks and growth and whatever, and how much of it is like actually trying to hold each other accountable to the stories they're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. And like, I'm so removed from that world that I can't pretend to know. What I can share that was interesting is, you know Mr. Ballin, right? I think
yeah, of course. Yeah.
I forget what podcast he was on. It must have been Chris Williamson.
Well, he was on My First Millions too, Mr. Ballin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's been on a couple, but so he is a not former, Navy SEAL.
Yep. He's a phenomenal storyteller. Probably the best storyteller ever.
Now his thing is he tells stories on YouTube and on podcasts.
Yep.
Like crime stories, scary stories. And he does a great job. Like amazing job. You listen to these stories and you're like edge of your seat. But he talks about on this podcast how difficult it is when your entire identity has been around being this thing, this warrior, this Navy SEAL. And when that time in your life ends, you're supposed to continue now being something else that is something different. But then there's also this like very weird unwritten rule of you're not supposed to necessarily take advantage of or lean on the fact that you were a Navy SEAL to become the next thing. Like it's very frowned upon. Like the first like TikTok thing that he put out when he was trying to figure out like, what am I going to do next? What's going to be my content shtick? He started talking about being a Navy SEAL. And apparently that's incredibly, incredibly frowned upon.
Right.
Like you don't, like you become, you put on that SEAL, you become that, person for the job that's bigger than you. Right. Which I understand. And I respect, like, I love that.
Yeah.
Right. But then to have this expectation on these guys that have given everything to be this thing for a part of their life, because the thing is, you can't be in special forces forever.
Right.
Like you just can't.
Right.
There's an entire life afterward. So he talks about that a lot. And I can't even come close to pretending to understanding what any of this is like. But I can imagine that it's incredibly difficult to be like, hey, like that, chapter of my life has ended. I'm trying to build something now, but it's like incredibly frowned upon to even mention that you've been this thing that gives you all the life experience and whatever that you want to be. So I've heard that there is this like very, very, very contentious friction between people that are active and people that have moved on and are writing the book, starting the podcast, doing the thing as, whoever, insert the name, Navy SEAL or, Army Beret or whatever it is.
Yeah, Green Beret or whatever. Yeah.
So I know that exists, like, and if you really, really take a step back, like, which side is right? Like,
no, because I mean, think about it this way. I agree with you. Like, there's been a lot of people that talk about that. Dave Casher, I thought, had a really interesting take on this. So Dave Casher is the director of the CrossFit Games, and most people don't even know he was a former Navy SEAL. And on top of that, he was a part of the development group. So he was part of like the SEAL Team 6, and like he's done some stuff that like is really gnarly. I know that because him and I are friends and we talk on like individually, but he never talks about it ever. I've never once heard him like talk about like stories publicly. I mean, he's shared that he's been a SEAL a few times, but it's not like something he talks about. But what he said is that he doesn't judge former SEALs who utilize that as a way to kind of like build a business, like, because he didn't have to, and his job didn't require him to lean on that. And he was blessed to be able to lean into CrossFit and not have to talk about that. So he can't speak on like, right? Like,
I like that.
So he kind of took it like, dude, I'm not here to talk about if it's right or wrong, because for me, it wasn't the right fit. So he was saying for Dave, it wasn't the right fit, but the career I chose, or what the career that chose me, didn't require me to talk about it. Right. So if this door opens and you don't have to talk about it, and I'm sure there's plenty of SEALs and other special forces that get into some corporate career where like, it's just you know what I mean? It's a part of the resume, but they don't talk about it. But what if that opportunity doesn't present itself and you choose to go on and become more of a influential individual in terms of like podcasts, social, whatever? I don't know, dude, it's tough, because you're right. Like, imagine you spend 20 years there, but you still have 40 more years to work.
For sure. And the tough thing now is there's so much of an incentive to create content.
Right.
Like, it's a completely different world now than it was probably even when Dave came out.
Yeah.
Because when Dave came out, there were a lot of these other opportunities, and there wasn't this like big, temptation to, hey, you can just talk about this thing that people love, is super exciting, is super captivating, like everyone looks up to. Like, if you go out there and you're like, hey, as a Navy SEAL, here's what I experienced, here's my training, here's what I did, you're immediately get some traction.
Right.
So it's tough to like forego that and go the much harder route. But I love that he said that like, hey, I didn't need to do it, but I can't judge people that, potentially needed that as like their avenue to find what was next.
But it was interesting, because I was talking to Tim and he just said, hey, man, I had a tough week. And I was like, wow, like normally Tim is like really uplifting and whatnot. It goes to show, man. Like,
and you didn't know at the time that he was going through.
Well, I know. No, I knew.
Oh, okay.
But I was just checking in on him, and he's like, yeah, man, it's been a tough week. Like, and it's like, it just goes to show, man. Like, I just wrote back to him. I was like, bro, you're a good dude doing good things. And like, you're a good man. Like, whatever they have to say, like, they're just coming at it from a different perspective. And because I only know him as the guy that I know as a friend. So
for sure.
But it's just unfortunate that like that type of culture. But to your point, man, like it's complicated because they signed up for something that's supposed to be like basically like a silent job, like a they have a term for it. Like, but then they get out, and then where do they go? And I don't claim to know it, and neither of us are in that situation. But it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch, especially when it's your friends, kind of like getting pulled in, and yeah, it's tough. But yeah, they'll figure it out. Tim always does. He's a total badass. Make sure to go check out everything that he's doing, and make sure to go check out the sheepdog response courses because those things are incredible. But dude, we got to go train. Any kind of final remarks here?
No, man. I mean, it's always great to hear from people. Great to hear topics that they want us to talk about. We'll continue to do that. Continue to be better about putting easy ways, whether it's Instagram sticker or like prompting it in the newsletter for people to send ideas.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this next year on the podcast. Like the guests that we have going on, some of the ideas of like what we're doing on the train hard side of things, on the training side of things, on the YouTube side of things, content and different events that we're going to go out and walk the walk, man. The YouTube videos that have gone out about High Rocks, if you haven't checked those out, please go watch them. But I've loved the comments that fire me up the most.
Yeah, like I listened to the podcast and I chose to sign up for
yes,
yeah,
exactly. It's not like, oh, Gabe, you guys did great, or like you guys did well. Like when someone's like, I listened to you guys, and that's the reason that I signed up for the thing, used the Train Hard program to train for it, and it went great. Like, dude.
I got an email yesterday. The guy's like, hey man, I took my first private at jiu-jitsu, and he's like, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you it was only because of your podcast. But it was the greatest experience. And I was like, fuck. I was like, dude, that's great. At least go experience it. I'm not here to like, dude, if you don't want to do it forever, that's fine. But at least go try it. And yeah, this guy had some great feedback. So keep the feedback coming. We're going to keep putting out content. We're going to keep sharing about our lives, about different competitions we're doing, about different things that are on our plate, about what's going on in the industry. And we're just going to keep training hard. We're going to hit some flex workout right now.
That's it.
All right. Talk to you guys soon. Keep getting after it. See you again next week.